So I thought I'd make a video on this. I've talked about this um, pretty thorough, but I thought I'd just bring it up. Just because it kind of boggled me to how dangerous the circumstances are, and never knowing that it's even among your peers. And I remember this is gonna be about many years ago. I was 19. It was about 6 months before my father died, and I got a call and saying that a friend was deceased or possibly deceased, kidnapped. And I used to exercise with him in box, and he was next to me whenever we were burying my best friend. It's like my brother. And um, long story short, living at my house, I get a call, so I'll go knock on his door, and he's murdered. I don't know that he's murdered. I just knew I felt something was bad. The way that Mary Zarati had told me over the phone, and I was like, "What the fuck," And she called me a couple of days later, and before that, she said something really bad happened. And the way that she said it, I thought, well, I didn't know Mary Zarati was a transgender, but that's what she said. So anyway, I get told a couple of days later, when I went over to his house, nobody answered the door. I end up going home, get a phone call, said nobody answered the phone. I called Mary, nobody answered the phone. She said she'd call me in a couple of days. She said she was working with the police or something. Or said she was going to get more information from the police. And then she said, called me a couple of days later, said that he was murdered. He was kidnapped. He was like 15 guys, all lured him into a house or into like a party and somewhere in the backyard. And it was like 15 of them, and there was like 10 of them, and they all jumped him, and it was about 3 or 4 of them that went in the car with him, and were all kidnapped him. So they tied him up, put a bag over his head, threw him in the trunk, and drove somewhere, and then put him on his knees and shot him in the back of the head. And I cried, and I was like, I couldn't believe there's something like this. At this point, I was like hitting my peak. I was like, my dad was like dying. There was all this money on this table. Everyone was taking my father's money and shit. It was just like, people think about like you're just dealing with a couple things and you think you dealt with so much. I was constantly evolving with so much, a lot of bad and a lot of greedy people, and nobody seemed to care anymore. Really nobody seemed to give a shit. It seemed like every man for yourself. Fuck everybody. Everyone's gonna die. And anyway, so that was that. Nobody seemed to care after this murder. The attitudes of other people didn't make any sense. It just seemed like that's the way life was. If you got lucky enough to be in good enough peers, then you got lucky, and if you didn't, you didn't. And life moved on, and I never forgot about the situation. But Mary Zarati, which was Robert Zarati, who passed away, senior and junior, they ended up many years ago having a sister, and that was Mary Zarati. She was in the call me, and she said she had her boyfriend was Jesse, as everyone knew him. Richard Murphy knew him, John Basile knew him. I think Anthony met him a couple times. And we called him Fat Nick. Nick Martinez knew who he was. His brother, which is Richard Martinez, that was at that GED school, was that he actually lived. And in fact, that family that Michael Rossiter was married to, his wife he was married to, is the people that live right next door to that house. Were related to Nick Martinez and Richard Martinez. Anyway, we get to this. I think I'm about 34 years old, and 33, 34 years old. I'm about 34. Yeah, 34, 35. And I'm living at Lawrence, Kansas in a homeless shelter, and behold, I see Jesse. The same guy that I was told by Mary Zarate in two separate occasions. I was told that he was shot and killed at a bar. He got in a fight in a bar, and he got shot and killed. He got shot in the stomach. And that's what Mary Zarate told me. And, Mary Zarate told me this when I was 27 working for the federal government. And I remember this very clearly. We were eating at the Olive Garden, and whenever I told everybody at the table, and I said, and she said, well, Hector, what do you do for work? He goes, and I didn't mean it to sound any other way than being happy to be able to work in an office job, my own desk, because I never got that in my life. It was all professional, I got to sit down and had my own computer, I get to, put little decorations and stuff, organize it. And she ended up, and when we're eating, this is whenever Daniel Box, Casey Rickles, we went together on the same car, and Casey was sitting next to me. Christina, Alicia, Rodrigo, Jacob was still pretty young. We're eating at the dinner table at Olive Garden, and I say, no, I work for the federal government. And when I said this, I could tell that, like, Mary Zarate, she shuddered in a way that, like, something wasn't right. Like, it's not, when I say something isn't right, like, this person may have done or said something that they had to be very careful, because they may have saw me in a situation where I was very vulnerable and very weak when they had no idea what was really going on. But I elaborated and I said, I work for the federal government. It's nothing really major. I just work on printers. I just do printing there at the building. That it sounds fancy. What federal government? Like you're some sort of authority. I don't do anything but just put paper, on printers. So anyway, but I could tell, and I didn't say anything because I brushed it off. And I remember Rodrigo kind of I could tell, I knew how Rodrigo would behave, and that's Alicia's husband. And I was looking over at Alicia, and I could tell by looking at Alicia, like, she was looking at Rodrigo like there was something that was going on, that something was unraveling. And I just know Alicia's vibe when, kind of like when the table shook. And not saying literally the table shook, but like, hypothetically, I guess you could say, I don't know if that's a correct vocabulary word. And you could tell that Alicia kind of felt a little bit more secure. Maybe there was something that was going on, because you gotta understand, there was a lot of drug usage. For those that don't know, when I was around Jesse, other than boxing with him and being beat up pretty bad a couple of times, he had like an SKS 47. He had a, assault rifle he brought. He had like 200 tons of marijuana coming in a U-Haul truck. He had, 15 pounds lodged into a workout duffel bag. I mean, it was crazy shit that I had seen, and he was working with, like, cartels that had murdered people. I had been in some really fucking scary circumstances where I thought I was going to be murdered for real and kidnapped. It was fucked up. I mean, I was very young, I couldn't even believe that I actually got into some of these circumstances. I thought for real, but I think there was something else that was going on. There was some sort of whatever. But anyway, that's when we were young. But we're eating at this table. We all leave, and I never heard from them again, other than maybe a couple of phone calls. But when I'm 34, 35, I'm 35 years old, I see Jesse alive. And one of the things that he did, I noticed many years ago, is he made an impersonation of a white cowboy. And I remember him doing this, and he said that he used this, I don't know what it was, like he was kind of joking around, but he said he used his persona, character, to over the phone or to fool somebody. I don't know but he only did it like one time. And I thought it was particularly but he only did it for just a couple of seconds. And so I remember when I saw him in Lawrence, Kansas, he had tried to change his identity's voice. And I was like, you don't talk. I mean, this was Jesse. I mean, unless he was an identical twin, I mean, this guy was Jesse. And I remember him just kind of putting, some shoes. He had some brand new shoes, I think, putting them underneath his bed or something. And kind of like a kid or something. But I know his character really well, and he used to do a lot of drugs as well, like a lot. And I noticed when I was just very quiet, just observing him, just totally just observing him. And he kind of looks over at me and he goes, "It's time to get to work." Or he says some shit like that. And I didn't say anything. I just kind of shuddered, and I just looked, and I just stayed quiet on my bed. I didn't say anything, and just laying there, just observing. And it was him. And I go to the cafeteria, sit down at the table, and he approaches me and he goes like, he's just looking right, and it was Jim. I don't know why I didn't want to say shit, but I thought it was like either an identical twin, and there was a part of me that maybe this guy just looked exactly like him, but I don't think it was. It was him. And I don't know how you could know somebody for that number of years and not say something. But at this time, I'm being beaten by so many electronic devices, and there's so much delusional shit of what I don't even give a shit. I'm just trying to retain myself. And I'm also trying to reach out to people, but I didn't want to get kicked out of there, and I wasn't sure of the circumstances, and I thought it's just best to just observe. It's best just to be observed of what's going on, because there's so much controlled shit that's going on that I don't know what these people are going to do to me if they see me associate. And I got on the phone a couple of days, or like the next day or later that day, and on the crisis line, I was like, "That's Jesse." And I was telling him, I think that's Jesse. And I was, well, yada, yada, yada. Within 2 or 3 days, he disappears. So what I think they did is they figured out that I believed it was him, and they found a reason to get him out of there, which was, "Hey, Jesse, we got a job for you. Why don't you come over here with us? We got you a job and a place to live." And it's just to take him out of there. So they did, and I never saw him again. But given the fact that that was Jesse, and with a conversation I was told that he was murdered, then what does it say about Billy, a kid that was 19 years old that went to Newman Smith High School, and he was shot and murdered and kidnapped? What about that kid? If Jesse's still alive, then I don't think maybe Billy's murder was fake. But the thing is I want to say, I don't think one of the things that I think I remember that I thought that got the confirmation that Billy really was murdered is that I think Rodrigo had told me, and he said that there was a funeral for Billy, and I remember him saying, I mentioned it to Rodrigo, and I said, "Do you know about Jesse here, about Jesse being murdered?" And he goes, and he agreed. He told me, and he said, "Yeah, I heard about Jacob, he was murdered. He was murdered a long time ago. He said, yeah, he was murdered a few years ago. Is what I was told. Uh, but I know that one of the last times I saw him was around the last times that I saw Mr. Zarate Senior, who was dying, and I remember it was like the last few months, and I want to say it was before Robert died. Was it right before Robert died or right after? It was right before. It was either right before Robert died or right after. I don't think it was right. Yeah, I think it was right after. And I remember him looking, and he looked like he had just didn't give a shit about life anymore. And I remember sort of that mentality of that Oak Cliff gangster lifestyle where whatever dreams you think exist in the world doesn't exist for everybody else, and it's a little bit different. And he had been in and out of prison a lot, and but it made me think that I don't think Billy was murdered, because I was confirmed by because I asked Rodrigo and I said, did you hear about what happened to Billy being murdered? And he goes, yeah. He goes, did you go to the funeral? He goes, yeah. He said, I don't know how he said it. He goes, yeah. They had a funeral service for him, but it was very weird because it was kind of vague, and it made me think whether Rodrigo had any, because Rodrigo knew, because I had mentioned that to him too as well, Jesse, because there was a feud between Jesse and Rodrigo that I knew in that relationship. There was a feud. This is how tight of the inner circle I knew. I knew the drama of the inner family a little bit more than any other friends. And there was a feud between Jesse and Rodrigo, because they were both like guys and they were both the same size, and Jesse was like a brought up fighter, and Rodrigo had internal rage in him. But the reason I say this is because I remember Alicia many years ago, where I was young. I was like 16 or 17, and Alicia said that she went to the club. Alicia said she went to the club, and she got into a fight with several girls, because I remember we were having breakfast, and it was always common for me and Robert and Girardi in the morning during the summer, during the weekday or weekends, to be cooking breakfast, and we'd be sitting at the dinner table just talking before they were cooking up some meals. And Alicia comes in, and she has her side of her face really bruised, really, really bad, like somebody just punched her a bunch of times in her face. It was like bad, like a black eye. And I was like, oh, Alicia. I was like, what happened, Alicia? And she had said that she got into a fight with some girls at the club. Well, it turned out that Robert, my friend, my best friend, was like my brother. He told me, and he was the one that told me, that said that he found out that Rodrigo had slapped her really hard, had hit her really, because I don't know what the situation was, but he had hit her really fucking hard and caused that. And there was a feud because Mary Zarate is the one that told me that. And I'm 17 years old, and she had said something to me about it. She said, just watch Rodrigo and watch what he does. He goes, don't say anything, Hector, but we all know that he hit her. That's what he said. That's what Mary Zarate had said. She said, we all know that he hit her. We all know that he hit her, but he's trying to play it off. And Alicia's lying. So it was kind of like me and Robert knew the entanglement a little bit, of the drama between their marriage and their relationship, because they lived in the house. So Robert had told me this, and so Robert was very mad and didn't say anything to Rodrigo. To my understanding, that's how it was believed, but I never said anything. And Jesse didn't like that, and Mary didn't like that, and Mary was like to tell Jesse to sort of straighten out Rodrigo, and that was kind of the dilemma of the situation. So Jesse would kind of roll around and take a look, because Jesse wasn't someone. Jesse, he may have been gangster, but he was not someone that liked men hitting women. He didn't like that. He was kind of old fashioned, very old fashioned. The music that they listened to back in those in his era, like he lived in a time where, people were, where he was robbing people for their shoes and clothes. I'm not kidding you. He would do this for real life. He would have a gun, and he lived in Oak Cliff in the hoods, and he would tell people and throw them in the fucking alley and say, I want your shoes, I want your fucking belt, I want your fucking pants, give me that coat. And matter of fact, give me that hat. That's a nice looking hat. And exactly just like that. And this is how he went shopping and went and got clothes. I mean, this is like the super ghetto. I mean, he would go rob people for shoes, for $300 pair of sneakers that he wanted. He would go rob people for them, and so I remember there was a feud between that, but if I don't know what the story is to this, I just know that Jesse what to my understanding, was supposed to be deceased, or I believed he was, and he didn't. Yet, and that means that if that was a lie, then who's to say that Billy is still alive, and he really wasn't murdered? And it makes me think that the reason that Mary Zarate could have said something like this is because, because I know she knew about Frankie being raped by Miguel. She knew about that. I don't think I've ever shared this part of the story. This is how I knew. But I'll go into that more later. But I remember, what I think that the reason that Mary could have made something up that is if any of this fame or anything is involved and I didn't know about. You got to understand that, people that live in the hood and specifically in the Hispanic community, and you sort of like that, there's a sort of mindset that's just different. Just like the blacks do things just a little bit, do different. The whites do things. The doors are open and close different for each ethnicity. And they come from, Zarate family came from Oak Cliff, which was a very poor, thugged out, and gangster life, hood life, for the Mexicans. And it was large, huge, everybody had black hair, everybody had tan skin. This is Mexicans, like the Badio. And anyway, my battery's running out, but I wanted to say that I think that it's worth me talking about. Because I don't know the circumstances. So, with these circumstances that are kind of going on with, I think that if Mary could have said something like that, is because there was some sort of tug of war over any fame, something that could have happened that maybe, either they could have been involved with selling drugs or something of that nature, because, you always have to be careful within your peers. You don't know who's dragging in the police or anything else, and then you'll get the blame for it, which has happened to me several times, including being poisoned by Jesse. I've had some real bad shit happen to me. Anyway, this is a long time ago, but I was thinking, it's like, man, who knows if Jesse really didn't die? I mean, if Billy wasn't murdered, if that was alive, that's a horrific fucking, crazy fucking thing to say, because I knew that family very well, and I don't blame the immediate family. It's just, I knew Mary was like on the thug side of shit and was involved with, I knew the family, like Jesse was smoking crack, and he was pawning off his, kids' PlayStation to go sell for drugs and shit. there was a lot of shit. Scott Springer knew who he was. He knew Jesse really well. He saw him in jail a couple of times. But, you know, I thought I'd bring that up. But, you know, at this point, I don't even know who's lying about who died. You know, I'm like, you know, my ex-girlfriend is deceased, and I don't know how much of this I want to believe anymore. But other than the only thing that I can do is just move on and ignore it, because I don't know what the hell to believe anymore, and I'm distraughted by the even idea of it. And I can't feel like I can't even mourn of it correctly because other people are taking advantage of the circumstances that I'm in and how I feel about it, and stripping it in any way that they want. And it makes me very agitated. You know, I'm like, I had sex with this person, you know, and it was willingly. You know, it was all mutual, all understanding. You know, it wasn't like being raped by a transgender by Patricia when it happened, but nobody seems to care, and life passed by. Anyway, I thought I'd talk about that for a little bit. Maybe that guy's still alive, and maybe he really didn't die. And, you know, I don't know what the circumstances is. Life has already passed by. And I thought I saw Mary Zarate one day. I work at Chipotle one time for like 3 weeks. For like 2 weeks, I work at Chipotle Chicken, or whatever they call it, Chipotle in Lawrence, Kansas. And I was like making burritos for everybody. And I remember it was during COVID, and I saw Mary Zarate come by with her mask, and it looked exactly like her, but she had her mask, and she looked at me, and the way she was looking at me, I was like, that's Mary Zarate. But she looked like she was pregnant, I think. And I remember her just looking at me like crazy, kind of, which was kind of very odd and weird. But, I don't know what to think. You know, I talked to her son, you know, which is Jesse's son, Jacob. I talked to him like 7 years ago. Last thing I knew is he was working 12-hour shifts. He's an ex-boxer. He won the Golden Gloves, which was like, for us to have known, for us during the time when Robert was boxing and stuff, and Edward and all people used to go over there, winning the Golden Gloves was like, man, winning the Olympics, gold medals and shit. You know, because you know, if you win the Golden Gloves in Texas and Dallas, you're a fucking badass, because you have a huge amount of people. The population, you know, people win Golden Gloves in different states, but you know, it's always honorable. But when you go and win the Golden Gloves in Dallas, you're going against like 2.5 million competitors. The population, the level of competition is greatly increased, drastically better than any other place. So you know, if you win that, you got some real talent. And he won the Golden Gloves. It was very surprising. And you know, but you know, I was like, you know, with all that situation that was going on, you know, with all that situation that went on with that, I mean, I really don't know what to think. That, you know, either way, time passed by. You know, life moved on and passed by. There was really no repairs to any of it. It's just basically who survived the better. You know, I had so many problems in my family to even begin with. You know, and you know, the people that, you know, my best friend wasn't even here to, you know, who had helped me so much I could never repay, you know, for all, you know, nobody really understood that. Nobody cared. And that's how life was, you know. Couldn't repay them. I want to talk about another thing also. I earned my GED diploma, and I hope my GED certificate brings peace to whatever had happened at Richland College, and it brings peace to the scenario, to Cisco, his sister, if that was his sister, and the circumstances, because I know that person can't be alive anymore. And I hope it brings some sort of resolution and peace. peace in whatever little way that may be, or important, drastic way that may be, regarding that tragedy and everyone in that class, including the teacher, Mr. Fred, I think his name was. I hope it brings some clarity to all the students and everyone in that class, and some sort of peace. As I'm hoping to further my education.